She ended things with, "But we'll still be friends." I smiled and said, "Sure, absolutely." A few weeks later, she realized that friendship didn't include being her emotional safety net, picking up her share of the rent, or fixing her car, especially not after I started dating her roommate. Our 2-year relationship ended on a Tuesday night. There wasn't a big fight, no yelling or dramatic tears, just a quiet, condescending monologue that wrapped with the single most patronizing phrase anyone can hear. "But we'll still be friends." Amber, now my ex, had been growing distant for a while. She calls herself an artist, which mostly meant working part-time at a coffee shop, talking endlessly about the novel she was going to write, and looking down on people like me who actually clocked in and got things done. I run a small classic car restoration shop. I make a living with my hands. To Amber and her artsy, aloof group of friends, that made me dull. Dependable maybe, but ultimately unremarkable. I was like a solid piece of furniture, always there, always useful, but never admired. That night, she sat me down on the couch in the apartment, an apartment where my paycheck covered nearly 80% of the costs, and launched into her well-rehearsed speech. It was full of vague cliches about needing space to grow creatively and how our relationship was stifling her true self. The message underneath all the artistic fluff was clear. I, with my oil-stained fingers and grounded mindset, was too ordinary for her larger-than-life vision. I didn't argue. I didn't beg her to stay. I'm a mechanic. When an engine's dead, you don't debate with it. You accept that it's finished. You either rebuild it or scrap it. And this relationship? It wasn't salvageable. So I sat and listened while she detailed her exit strategy from my life. Then came the final blow, soft-spoken and dripping with superiority. She gently rested her hand on my knee, her face the perfect cocktail of condescension and false compassion. "But we'll still be friends, right?" she said, as if she were handing me a gift. She genuinely believed I'd be grateful, that I'd nod along and stay close, happy to exist as her reliable, platonic fallback. Good old Jake, still available to change her oil or help float her half of the rent, but now without the burden of romance. In that instant, something clicked. The sadness and sting I might have felt were instantly replaced by ice-cold clarity. She wasn't ending a relationship. She was reclassifying me, turning a partner into an unpaid support line. I looked at her perfectly calm, self-satisfied expression, and smiled. Slow and steady. "Absolutely," I said. Relief spread across her face like sunshine. She thought she'd pulled it off. She thought she'd secured her freedom and kept her safety net intact. What she didn't realize was that my version of friendship was about to teach her a lesson, one that came with a steep price. "I'm really glad you're being mature about this," she said, her smile finally looking real. "Of course," I replied, rising from the couch. "That's what friends do." I gave her a small nod and added, "And as your new friend, here's a little tip. You might want to start looking for someone to cover my part of the rent. I'll be moving out this weekend. Friendship is free, but my portion of the bills isn't." Her face didn't just drop, it shattered. "Wait, what? You're moving out? You can't. Where am I supposed to live?" "Not sure," I said, already headed toward the bedroom to start packing. "But I'm confident a creative spirit like you will figure something out. That's what friends do, right? They believe in each other." Update 1. The idea of me actually leaving seemed too far-fetched for Amber to process. For the next hour, she shadowed me from room to room as I packed, her reactions escalating from disbelief to panic and eventually to fury. "You're seriously just abandoning me?" she yelled as I pulled shirts from the closet we once shared. "The lease has both our names on it. You're legally obligated to stay." "You're absolutely right," I said, folding a sweater without looking at her. "We're both responsible, which is why I'll continue paying my share until the end of this month." That gives you roughly 25 days to either find someone new to take over my lease, or we can cancel it together and split the $2,000 early termination fee. I'm fine with whichever route you choose." The moment I mentioned the fee, her expression crumbled. Panic surged across her face. It was clear she didn't have that kind of money lying around. Her part-time gig wasn't about paying bills. She referred to it as her creative funding, barely enough for lattes and sketchbooks. I was the one who'd been footing the real expenses. "I can't come up with that kind of cash," she said, voice cracking. "And there's no way I'll find a roommate in time. Jake, you have to stay, just until the lease is up. It's only 6 more months. It's the right thing to do. We're still friends, right?" I looked at her evenly. True friends don't trap each other in tense, emotionally exhausting living situations. That's not healthy. I paused, made sure she was listening. "So, as your friend, I'm giving you room to grow, and I'm claiming mine too." Right then, our third roommate, Maya, stepped through the front door. She worked as a vet tech and occupied the apartment's smallest bedroom. Always quiet, often exhausted, Maya made it a point to keep her distance from Amber's perpetual storm of drama. She paused in the entryway, took one glance at my open suitcase and Amber's tear-streaked, enraged face, and let out a slow, tired sigh. "Don't tell me," she muttered. "Her car broke down again?" Amber spun toward her like a stage actress in mid-meltdown. "Worse, he's leaving me. He's moving out." Maya's eyes met mine, her face blank but alert. "We broke up," I told her quietly, continuing to fold a shirt. "I'm packed through the end of the month. After that, someone else can take my room." She didn't react right away, just gave a small, deliberate nod. "All right," she said. Then, without another word, she slipped into her room and gently closed the door behind her. Maya had mastered the art of quiet disengagement. Left without backup, Amber launched into a weekend-long campaign of emotional sabotage. She wept. She reminisced about our first kiss. She accused me of being cold, robotic, and soulless. I didn't respond in kind. I just kept folding clothes, calmly replying through the unbreakable filter of our new friendship. "You're really going to throw away 2 whole years like they meant nothing?" she sobbed. "As your friend," I said with soft detachment, "I think it's healthier to look ahead, not back." The first major test of our newly defined boundaries came the next week. I had moved into a small sublet a few towns over and was starting to rebuild my routine. Then, on a Tuesday night, I got the call. "Jake, thank God you picked up," she whispered in a panicked rush. "The power just went out. And the internet's down too. You have to come fix it." "Did you check the circuit breaker?" I asked. "The what?" she said, confused. "I don't know anything about that stuff. You always handled it." "It's in the hallway, in the utility closet," I explained calmly. "You're probably just dealing with a tripped switch. Look for the one that's flipped and push it back the other way." "I'm not doing that," she replied sharply. "It's pitch black in here and I'm scared. What if I get electrocuted? Please, Jake, do it for me. As my friend." And there it was, the old loyalty card pulled from the deck. I inhaled deeply before answering. "Amber, as your friend, I do care about your safety, but I'm 2 towns away right now. It'd take me an hour to get there. The quickest solution is to call the building's emergency maintenance line. That's what they're there for. They have a tech on call, day or night. The number's on the fridge." She went silent, not because she was convinced, but because the thought of relying on someone other than me had clearly never crossed her mind. "But don't they charge for that?" she asked, suddenly timid. "They might," I said evenly. "But as your friend, I think paying a small fee is worth your comfort and peace of mind, don't you? You've got this. Let me know how it turns out." Then I ended the call before she could object again. Of course, the requests didn't stop there. A few days later, she reached out again. This time it was about a strange sound her car was making. I told her she should take the car to a certified mechanic. When she balked at the estimate, I calmly suggested she open a savings account dedicated to auto repairs. Every issue she ran into, things I used to fix without hesitation, was now met with cool, friendly, and entirely unhelpful suggestions. That was the new dynamic. I was simply her friend now. And friends, I was subtly showing her, don't step in and solve your messes. They just offer a sympathetic smile and wish you well. Update 2. Amber's slow-motion unraveling dragged on for another month, and thanks to an unexpected alliance with Maya, I had a front-row seat. After I moved out, Maya and I started texting here and there. At first, it was like trading intel across enemy lines. She'd send updates when Amber had a particularly theatrical breakdown, and I'd reply with condolences and a shrug. That's how I found out Amber's roommate search was going nowhere fast. The issue wasn't that she needed someone to split expenses. She wanted a stand-in for me. The listing she put up read more like a dating profile than a housing ad. She wanted someone quiet, tidy, financially secure, and willing to do their fair share around the apartment. In other words, she was trying to hire a new live-in partner who'd also cover half the rent. Predictably, no one bit. One evening, Maya sent a message that felt more urgent than usual. Her little mutt, Buster, a wiry terrier mix, was sick. He was lethargic, refusing to eat, and she was starting to panic. The nearest emergency vet was across town, and she didn't want to risk taking him on public transit. Amber's out with some guy she met at a poetry slam, she wrote. I don't know who else to call. I didn't hesitate. I'm on my way, I texted back. I picked them up and drove straight to the clinic. We ended up sitting together in the waiting room for 4 hours, talking about everything and nothing. She vented about the crushing expectations of law school. I shared the satisfaction I got from restoring vintage cars. Somewhere between stories, we realized we had the same dry wit, the same grounded outlook on life. When the vet finally emerged to say Buster was going to be just fine, he'd eaten a sock, something between us had changed. After that night, I started finding reasons to see her more often. I offered to take a look at her car, an even more battered sedan than Amber's. One Saturday, I spent the whole afternoon under the hood, changing the oil and replacing her spark plugs. I didn't ask for anything in return. I just wanted to help. I liked her. Eventually, we started dating. Quietly at first. It felt natural, easy. No games, no manipulation. Just two people who genuinely liked being around each other. We didn't broadcast it. We both knew the second Amber found out, the drama would be seismic. The reckoning came about 2 months after Amber and I had split. She'd finally managed to find a new roommate, a grad student who, from the look on his face, already regretted signing on. I needed to go by the apartment one last time to remove my name from the lease. Maya had just finished her final exams for the semester, so I told her I'd treat her to a celebratory dinner afterward. She came with me to the apartment so we could head out together once I signed the papers. The atmosphere in the living room was tense. The building manager sat awkwardly on the edge of the couch. The new tenant stood stiffly nearby, and Amber was buzzing with forced enthusiasm, talking loudly about new beginnings and how the universe always brings things full circle. As I scrawled my signature across the last form, officially severing my ties to the apartment, Maya stood quietly beside me. She reached over and gave my hand a gentle squeeze, a small, supportive gesture. But to Amber, it may as well have been a slap across the face. Her wide, overly animated eyes locked on our joined hands. That artificial smile she'd been performing froze in place. Then, like a crack in a frozen lake, it began to break. You could see the storm coming. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one caught in it. All the color drained from her face, and in its place bloomed a look of stunned, poisonous betrayal so sharp it caught me off guard. In one silent moment, she realized what she had lost: her boyfriend, her financial safety net, her fixer of all things broken, and her emotional outlet. And now, sitting on the same couch where she'd once ruled the room, she watched him replaced by the soft-spoken, mild-mannered roommate she'd never made the effort to understand. There was no outburst, no tears, just a fixed stare at our intertwined fingers. And in that stillness, I believe she finally grasped the brutal cost of the friendship she had insisted on. Final update. It's been just over a year since I walked out of that apartment and left that chapter behind. Since then, Amber's and my lives have moved in exactly the separate directions she was so eager to pursue. After the debacle over the lease, everything in her world began to unravel. Her new roommate, a grad student she barely knew, lasted all of 6 weeks before fleeing in the dead of night. He left behind a single note that said he'd rather sleep in his car than spend another day living there. With no one to split the bills and no means to pay the rent herself, Amber was evicted. According to Maya, she ended up moving back in with her parents in a small rural town about 3 hours away. The dream of a bold, creative life in the city had crumbled, and her grand voyage of self-exploration had led her right back to her old bedroom at home. She made a last-ditch effort to ruin my name, and Maya's, by starting a smear campaign, but it fell completely flat. She'd burned too many bridges. Everyone knew she'd been the one who pulled the plug on our relationship. Her attempts to recast herself as the devastated, abandoned victim didn't land. No one was buying it. As for me, I've never been happier. Maya and I live together now in a modest house I bought on the other side of town. It's got a spacious yard for Buster and a 2-car garage where I can work on my side projects. Maya passed the bar and is now practicing law as a junior associate at a firm downtown. We're partners in the truest sense. We split the costs, share the workload, and genuinely root for one another without an ounce of resentment or rivalry. It's the smoothest, most natural relationship I've ever experienced. None of this was ever about vengeance in the dramatic sense. There was no elaborate scheme, no grand reveal. My form of revenge was quiet, steadfast, and deliberate. She wanted to be friends? Fine. I became the most supportive yet unhelpful friend possible. I gave her advice without ever intervening. I upheld the boundary she demanded and let her fully feel the weight of the choices she made. I stepped out of the role she depended on, and her life, which had relied entirely on me to function, came crashing down. And while she stood in the wreckage, I moved forward. I built something stronger, something real, with a woman who valued the kind of partnership Amber never understood. And that, quiet, grounded, and earned, is the most rewarding ending to a friendship I can imagine.